Hi folks, Mr. Swindle's not here today, so I'm going to make you a video and try and go through quadratics. So please write the title, quadratics, and the date. A quadratic is an equation where the biggest power of x is 2. So that is not a quadratic. That is a quadratic. That is a quadratic. That is not a quadratic because the biggest power of x in this one is x cubed. The top one is not a quadratic because the biggest power of x is not x squared. These two are quadratics because the biggest power of x is x squared and the biggest power of x is x squared. So a quadratic, write this down, a quadratic is an equation where the largest power of x is 2. Write that bit down now. Pause the video to give you time to write it down. Now, I'm not sure where you're up to, but I know you only were taught by a couple of lessons last week, so I'm hoping that you've either done a little bit of quadratic graphs or you've not done it yet at all. Now, you might know how to draw a graph, a straight line graph, y equals mx plus c, using the method that I'm going to do. But today what we're doing is drawing quadratic graphs. So the first step that we're going to do is we're going to substitute these values of x into this equation so that we can work out the corresponding values of y. When I teach this, I always teach to substitute in the positive numbers first, just because they're easier to do. For instance, if I'm substituting that x is 2, I'm going to do 2 times, that's the x, we know the x is 2, squared. With BIDMAS, we need to do this bit first, so that would be 4. So this is 2 times 4, which is 8. So that's the value of y when x is 2. Okay, now I'm going to do the value when x is 1. So we've got 2, and you might prefer it if I write it like this. That's the same thing over here. 2 times 1 squared. You've got to do the 1 squared first because of BIDMAS. 1 squared is 1, so I've got 2 times 1 is 2. Now I'm doing the 0. I'm going to do this one underneath just because of space. I'm doing 2 multiplied by 0 squared. 0 squared is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. And this is where it gets slightly more complicated. I'm going to do 2 times negative 1 squared. Now be careful here because often people make mistake with negative numbers. My negative 1 squared, that's negative 1 times negative 1. That's going to give me 1. So this is 2 times 1, which is 2. Now I'm going to do my x is negative 2. 2 times negative 2 squared. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. And if you look, you might notice a pattern. Often there is a pattern, and have a look for it. This is the other reason I say do the positives first. If you're really struggling with the negatives, or to help you check, there should be usually a little bit of a pattern. There won't always be, but usually there is. Now all I'm going to do now is plot these points. Remember, coordinates are plotted, the x, then the y. So starting with this first coordinate, I've got negative 2, 8. Then I've got negative 1, 2, 0, 0, 1, 2, 2, 8. Now, when you get to this bit, it's important that you join these up with a nice smooth curve. Now, I just had to move my iPad because I have to do it kind of sideways. I always have my book sideways to do that. Nice smooth curve. You are not allowed to do what's called feathering. Feathering is this. Joining it up like that. If your line looks like that, you'll lose a mark. That's called feathering. You want one smooth curve and you want to go through every point. So take your time to do that and find a comfortable position for your hand. Now, I'm going to do one more example. Your questions start slightly easier and then get a bit harder. So the hardest ones are a little bit like this one. So try and remember, I always start with the positives just because they're easier to calculate and I might be able to see a pattern. So first of all, I've done it again, sorry. First of all, I'm going to use this 3 and I'm going to do 3 squared. I'm just substituting the 3 every time I see an X. So every time I saw an X, I substituted a 3 in. And I would advise you to write these calculations down. If you try and do them in your head, you're going to make a mistake. This becomes 9, add 9, subtract 6, because remember you've got to do your BIDMAS. And that's 18, subtract 6 is 12. So this one's 12. Now I'm going to substitute X is 2. 2 squared plus 3 times 2, subtract 6. That is 4, add 6, subtract 6, so that one's 4. I'm going to do it underneath now. The next one I'm doing is 1. So I've got 1 squared plus 3 times 1, subtract 6. That's 1 plus 3, subtract 6. That's going to give me negative 2. Next, I've got 0. That's 0 squared plus 3 times 0, subtract 6. That's 0 plus 0, subtract 6. Negative 6. Now, this is the one you need to be careful. Now you've got to substitute the negative 1. Now, when we substitute negative numbers in, you must always put them in a bracket. And the reason is, it stops your calculator from accidentally doing some of the wrong calculations with it. For instance, if you put this into your calculator, what your calculator is going to do is negative 1 squared. So it's going to give you an answer negative 1. That's not the calculation we're trying to do here. We're trying to do negative 1 times negative 1, which is 1. So you must put negative numbers into a calculator with a bracket to avoid getting accidental mistakes. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3, subtract 6. So I've got 1 plus negative 3, subtract another 6. Be careful with these negative calculations. We've got negative 8. Next one, I'm going to substitute negative 2 in. So I've got negative 2. What did I say? Don't forget to do if you've got brackets. Put it. Oh, I said brackets. What you don't forget to do if you've got negatives? You put it in a bracket. Okay, so I'm going to do it like this. Now, this is in case I've mentioned a calculator. I don't want you to use a calculator today. This is just in case you get it in a calculator paper. It's very likely to come up in a non-calculator paper as well, so you need to be able to do it without a calculator. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And then we've got our subtract 6. So we've got 4. Adding a negative means I'm going to subtract it. So we've got 4 subtract 6, which is negative 2. Subtract 6 again, that's negative 8. And then all we need to do is plot those points. So we've got this point here, we've got this point here, and it goes here. Now, when you are plotting quadratics, it's really important that you make it into a curve. So if you look, we're going to do this. When you get to the bottom, I don't want you to go flat. I want you to curve down and up again. You must have, and it's quite hard to do in this one, but you must have a curve, a bump at the bottom, not a flat line. Now, the only thing I'd say about what I've done is I taught you before about drawing in a good curve. If I was in an exam, I would be rudding that out and I would be plotting it and doing it again because that was not one smooth curve. So that's what one smooth curve should look like. Now, you've got, I think it's 3 or 4 of these to try on your worksheet. So I'd like you to do what I did. If you've got headphones and you're on your own iPad, feel free to watch this video again to help you. You will probably make mistakes with the negatives, so be really careful. If it doesn't look like a nice smooth curve, something like this, you've probably made a mistake, so go back and check it. So do that side of the worksheet. Then on the back of the worksheet is a little bit of extension work, just in case you have done a bit of this before. It doesn't matter if you have done this before, it's good practice. But yeah, bit of extension on the back, in case you can do it. And then I think I've also set Haggerty clip. I want to say 222, I can't remember, but I've set you a Haggerty clip to do as well. So if you complete the sheet that's in front of you, just do as much as you can and then set the Haggerty clip. Please hand your sheets in at the end. Please write your name on the top of them. If you're at home, the sheet is attached. If you can print it, please do. If you can't, you'll have to copy it into your book, but it shouldn't be too difficult. It's all on squares. You don't need to copy the questions, just the table and then the graph. Thank you.